Last week, the SNB intervened strongly to try and curb the appreciation of their currency. The Japanese yen has also been considered overvalued as investors seek safe havens. In their August meeting, the Bank of Japan eased policy by increasing the size of an asset purchase fund. The minutes of that meeting were out on Monday and show continued concern for the strength of the yen amongst the BOJ. Joining me on the line to talk about what actions we may see to curb the yen strength is Derek Halpenny from Japan's largest bank, Tokyo Mitsubishi UFJ. Thank you very much for talking to Dukescopy TV, Derek. The minutes show that some of the members are very concerned specifically about the impact of the strong yen on businesses who may wish to move abroad. Are they right to be concerned?
The evidence is that the Japanese economy is clearly underperforming, and the size of Japan's economy relative to before the crisis is still about 6 percentage points below that pre-crisis peak, which is the worst of all the major developed economies. So I think certainly in that sense the underperformance of the macroeconomy, I think part of that story is certainly the strength of the yen and how the corporate sector has struggled to deal with such a scale of appreciation.
We see economic problems continuing in Europe and the US and intervention in the currency markets last week by the SNB. Do you think because of these factors that we're likely to see the yen continue to strengthen? And if so, for how long?
Yeah, I think that's the unfortunate aspect of the problem the Japanese authorities have at the moment. Even if you go back to the period in which they implemented aggressive quantitative easing between 2001 and 2006, there's no real evidence that the yen was significantly undermined by what the Japanese authorities themselves were doing. What was far more important back then in weakening the yen was the favourable conditions abroad in terms of higher yields and strong risk appetite. Of course, now we're in an opposite situation. The chances of any kind of sustained success in weakening the yen through intervention or other policies is pretty slim until we see evidence of the global economy turning around. So in terms of timing of that, given the fact that the Federal Reserve have signalled a commitment to potentially leave interest rates where they are until 2013, the summer of 2013, we could be talking that type of time frame, years in which we see the yen remaining significantly strong.
In August, the Bank of Japan eased monetary policy with a large increase of 10 trillion yen in an asset purchase fund, but there was no repeat in September. Going forward, do you see the possibility of more BOJ measures following the moves by the SNB last week? And with interest rates near zero in Japan, what more could they actually do?
Well, yeah, that's the difficult thing. I think certainly if you were to argue for aggressive policies, they could simply go back to more aggressive quantitative easing, and with, say, for example, large amounts of printed Japanese yen, they committed to purchasing only foreign securities. Something along the lines of the SNB. Now, I wouldn't suggest that the BOJ could feasibly fix or put a floor in its currency. That's unlikely, but they could certainly take action in terms of increasing their purchases of foreign securities. Unfortunately, I think that's quite unlikely. The history is that the BOJ is an ultra-conservative central bank and do not go into these kind of aggressive policy steps in order to weaken the Japanese yen. I think it is also worth mentioning when we make these comparisons with the Swiss franc, when you look at the yen on a real effective basis, it's nothing like as strong as what the Swiss franc is, and I think in that sense, when Switzerland was undergoing such a massive appreciation to what are considerably overvalued levels for a small open economy, that was certainly going to have detrimental implications for the Swiss economy. It's somewhat different for Japan. Yes, it's definitely a negative for the macroeconomic situation, but on a real effective basis, the yen is essentially not at extreme levels, and therefore I certainly don't see extreme policy actions at this point in time.
Many thanks for that insight into Japan, Derek. As always, there's plenty more news and exclusive interviews online at Dukescopy TV. Goodbye.